And how about this for a big time interview? We have thrash legend himself, David Ellefson, on the show. David, how you going, man?
Ned, how are you, buddy? I'm doing well, man. Looking forward to seeing you guys here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's not too long at all, man. How excited are you to get back over here to Australia? I know you've been out here a bunch of times.
Super excited. You know, Australia is not a place most people get to go. And when we do go there, it's every few years, and it's it's a week or 10 days of our lives, so it kind of goes by pretty quick. So it's sort of the coveted spot on the planet that we all love to go to. And I think in this case, me and Jeff Young were actually going to go there together on the So Far So Good So What tour in 1988, and the tour ended up getting canceled on our side. So it's fun for me and Jeff to connect and go down there, 35 years later, playing the songs we were meant to play then. Now we're going to play them now. So thanks for your patience.
that is quite patient, isn't it? 35 years. But you have
35 years.
You have been out here before, though, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I've been there a bunch of times. I mean, Megadeth finally got there in 91 on the Rust in Peace tour. We were back there again, I think, in the late 90s. We were there on the 2001 on the World Needs a Hero tour. 2015, right before Dystopia, came out. And it's funny, I was there twice in 2015, later in the year with Megadeth, but then earlier in the year, right before I recorded the Dystopia album, I was down there doing a spoken word tour. So, which it's brilliant the way it happened, actually, because I was like spoken word, because I had a book out, a memoir, My Life with Death. And so, a friend of mine had arranged it to go down there, and it's funny because I was like, all right, I can tell some stories, but let me bring the bass, and that basically developed a new touring thing for me called Bass Story, which I then took around the world. I went to Europe, did it in America, went to South America. So thank you, Australia. It all started down there with you guys. So appreciate that.
Here. And of course you've been down here. I think I actually spoke to you when you were doing that spoken word tour. You just sort of caught me off guard with your answer back there. It makes me want to ask the question though, David, what sort of crazy Australian things that have you picked up on that are just totally bizarre to you being an American? Is there anything just wild out here that blows your mind?
Well, look, I remember going to the Brisbane Zoo, and not, I guess, the venue we're playing called the Zoo, but like the Zoo, right? and I remember that was in 91, super hot, really humid when we went there, because it was February, I think, and January, February, so it was pretty warm. But I remember, holding a koala bear, right? And it was the thing, right, where you'd stand, you come to the line, and put the koala bear, and he was really cute, he'd hug you. And then they'd take the picture, So I still have that photo, and it's that is a priceless memory, man. Because we don't have koala bears in Arizona where I live, So that was one. And I remember, there was a lot of people coming over from Tasmania, because we didn't tour. We didn't actually go down to that island, which its own little country, I guess. A lot of those people were coming over to the shows. And I remember the first time I ever bungee jumped was it Sydney? I can't remember. Wherever we start. No, it was in Auckland, New Zealand. So I guess that technically not Australia, but part of the journey of New Zealand and over to Australia. So it looks like I had to go down under to have all these awesome experiences. So
that's awesome.
It's people are great, would love it. You guys know how to have a great time. You're very rock and roll, and you seem to always enjoy when we go there.
Oh, yeah, man. And very much looking forward to you getting out here playing the classics like you were talking about before. Killing is my business and business is good, as well as So Far So Good, So What? Where do they sort of sit in your favorites, David?
So Far So Good was always one of my favorites. It was the album that I started composing for the band, and part of it I think is just kind of naturally happened, because we're basically down to just me and Dave again, as we transitioned out of the Gar and Chris lineup. Chuck was the drum tech, but then became the drummer, because he is a great drummer. and was the right feel and sound for those songs. That just kind of happened naturally on the road. We were in Washington, D.C. at the Bayou Club, I think it was, and Gar and Chris didn't come to sound check, and me and Dave knew we had to get these songs written because as soon as we ended the Pete Sells tour, we needed to go right in the studio and start cutting, what became So Far So Good. So Chuck was back there, and Dave's like, Chuck, get up there and play. And I remember we ripped through like Holy Wars, Mary Jane. No, not Holy Wars. That was a year later, but Mary Jane in particular, which is a pretty complex song, and Chuck knew it. I mean, it was like, okay, the boy's been paying attention. He's sitting back there working for Gar as a tech, but we heard him play. Like he would set, Gar's kit up, and he would play at sound, before sound check, and it was like, yeah, Chuck can play, man, and he had this really kind of. He liked everything from Steely Dan to DRI, and so he had this kind of punk rock thing about him so I think he was a great sound on the record, and we went into the album, thinking we would just be a 3-piece. We had our friend Jay Reynolds, kind of on ready to do the record, but it was a little musically out of his wheelhouse, to be honest with you. He was kind of, this because he came from Malice, it was a little bit of a different thing. And so he actually brought Jeff Young in, and then we kept Jeff. Just kept it like, okay, Jeff's the guy, he can play. And look, let's face it, Chris Poland set the bar pretty high, from the previous records. So, and that really started this dichotomy, inside the band where it was Dave and this other guitar player, and they had two very different sounds. Dave being the kind of gutsy Ted Nugent, Jimmy Page guy, and then the other guy being these virtuoso players, from Chris Poland to Jeff to Marty Friedman to Al Petrelli and even Glenn Drover and Sean Broderick or Chris Broderick rather, and now Kiko and stuff. So it sort of set. Jeff was kind of the one to continue the tradition, which sort of, it sort of followed the template of that. So, that record for me is a fond moment, Killing as well, but for different reasons, is our very first record. In fact, we were so poor and so broke that by the time we finally got some money from Combat to go in the studio, it was like, oh my God, we could live here. Like we could stay, when we cut the tracks at Malibu, up in Malibu at Indigo Ranch, it was a big studio that the Moody Blues had owned. And so it had like a kitchen. I mean, if your budget allowed, ours didn't, you could actually hire a chef, do the whole thing, right? It had these chalets so we could live there. And it was an hour up this dirt road way in, up in the mountains of Malibu. So, I mean, it was way far away from LA, and, you could really go up there and just escape and just really settle into the session. We didn't have enough money to stay there very long. We, basically recorded the basic tracks, the guitar, bass, and drums. And Killing, that's me, Dave, and Gar recording that stuff together at one time. That's one take. And we wouldn't make another record like that till Euthanasia. We did that. Then me, Dave, Marty, and Nick Menza recorded together as a band. And so that method of recording it produces a different product. You get a different kind of vibe to it. So so those are just some of my memories of those records in those days.
Yeah, they're fantastic memories right there, David, and very much looking forward to them, catching them live and seeing them. And I guess although that sort of nostalgia and memories and stuff will come flowing back for you guys.
Yeah, reconnecting with Jeff, again, here we are, years later playing these songs that we would have played, in 1988. But, Jeff is, he's a fantastic player, like a lot of guys, once they were out of Megadeth, they just kind of forgot how to play guitar like that. They intentionally, they said, okay, that gig is over. It requires a lot of effort to become that player in the band. And then when the gig's over, it's like, okay, let me just kind of forget all that and sort of be debriefed after a session, right? It's like being a spy, right? You're trained and then you're debriefed, right? Stick the needle in you and suck all your memory out, right? And
I like that.
So, Jeff went on to become, he had a #1 record. It's funny. He's the only guy after Megadeth to go on and have a #1 record, at least, pretty quickly, with this artist out of Brazil that he was working with. And so he got into a lot of kind of Brazilian nylon string flamenco stuff. Or not, I shouldn't say flamenco, this Brazilian nylon string stuff. And so, you know, he explored other music, you know. So for him to come back all these years later and you know, dig back into this, you know, to these records, I think it was fun for him. It was challenging for sure to just kind of remember all this, but you know, Jeff is an incredible player, man. I mean, he has not lost one shred of his, you know, aptitude and capabilities. So he's definitely on point. And you know, and again with this stuff, you think he's playing Dave's parts, Jeff's parts, and Chris Poland's parts, and you know, so he's covering a lot of ground here.
Yeah, that's amazing right there. And kind of switching things up, David, talking about the band Megadeth, obviously here, you guys have sort of popped up on so many cool things over the year. I remember last time I was talking to you, I was talking about the Beavis and Butthead side of things with the Megadeth. I grew up on that. Bill and Ted as well. I wanted to tell you this story, man. I was interviewing the guy from Bill and Ted, Alex Winter, and I asked him if he was a Megadeth fan. And I kind of caught him out on this, David. He goes, oh, yeah, I love Megadeth, but they've never, you know, with all the references or anything like that, we've never actually had them on a soundtrack. And I didn't know what to say, man, because that was definitely, that's how I discovered Megadeth off the Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey soundtrack. And I was just like, man.
You gotta give him a hall pass. I know it's
I had to.
Well, and it's funny because Megadeth and Metallica were so popular together around the same time, and some people clearly loved Metallica, and it's oftentimes they'd get us confused. You know, if they, you know, a lot of people just listen to music in passing. You know, they're not like you and me, diehard fans. We know who played what solo on what record and what year. I mean, you know, we're cut from probably a different cloth than a lot of people who, you know, they like the music, but that's it. You know, they don't really dig into sort of the lifestyle of it. You know, so. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's funny, Bill and Ted, you know, they came to us, Tom Wally, who was our West Coast A&R guy at Capitol Records when we got signed in '86. He then went over to, I think with Jimmy Iovine, they started, Interscope Records, and so that soundtrack was on Interscope. So Tom loved Megadeth, loved Dave, and so he came to us. He said, I want Megadeth to do this song. So, and the title of the movie was called Bill and Ted Go to Hell, and that's why we called the song Go to Hell, right? So and then after we recorded it, then they changed the name of the movie. I guess they, you know, with film, they do a lot of test marketing. They do these screenings in these small little theaters in Hollywood. They have, you know, 50 people show up, they ask them questions. I mean, they really do their market research. It's like Starbucks, you know, they don't just randomly put a Starbucks up. I mean, they know every fucking car, every person, they know every pedestrian. I mean, they really know their numbers, man. And in film, they do the same thing because there's a lot of money on the line of this stuff, right? So I guess one of the things they realized is they had to change the name of the movie. That's why they did Bogus Journey rather than Go to Hell. But now at this point, we already had the title and the song was done. So we kept the title, they did not, and life moved on. But yeah, then you're right. A couple years later, we got asked to do the Beavis and Butthead one. And fortunately, Beavis and Butthead, you know, look, careers were made or killed by Beavis and Butthead, right? Fortunately, they liked us, you know, but they liked us. And, you know, so we got to be included in that, and then we wrote 99 Ways to Die.
99 Ways to Die.
Yeah, and it was kind of a play on Paul Simon's 99 Ways to Leave Your Lover, right? It was kind of a little play on that. So, yeah, we sat on the bus. We were on this tour. We were going to go out with Aerosmith, of all things, but we were on a tour with Megadeth, Pantera, and White Zombie. You know, who Beavis and Butthead loved White Zombie, and they were blowing up as a result. I mean, you could see it every night on this tour. And Pantera, of course, were becoming the big, you know, monolith that they became. And so we were driving down the road on the bus, writing the lyrics to this song, and we all threw some lines in, and that's why it was fun, because it got to be something we all got to participate in writing. And even our tour manager Skip got a line in there, so it's funny that everybody got to participate. It was a good time on that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do you have like a favorite thing that your music's popped up on like throughout the years? Is it like the Beavis and Butthead or the Bill and Ted's, or is it something else?
You know, that's a good question. When we cut Cryptic Writings, we did that track for Duke Nukem, right? Which I didn't ever really see much more about that, but other people will randomly tell me, dude, Duke Nukem. I'm like, oh my God, that's right, I forgot. And it's funny, even with Risk, we cut Crush 'Em, and Jean-Claude Van Damme was used in a movie of his. So I remember he came to he filmed some scenes, not with us, but at the same setting. It was this power plant in Southern California, kind of south of Long Beach or something, I think, where we filmed it. And I remember he was there. I don't know that I met him. I remember Dave was talking to him for a minute, but he's a badass. I mean, so, and then we went and we also, Goldberg, the big WCW wrestler at that time, he used it as his theme song. And so I remember going, that was fun, man. We went to the Atlanta Dome in Atlanta, and where they held the WCW, and walking through the backstage and seeing all these wrestlers rehearsing their moves, and it was that was cool, man. That was like a real kind of look behind the scenes of that, because that was freaking huge business, man. I mean, that's big time stuff, the wrestling thing, So it was fun to be part of that. I've had a fun career, man, and we've had fun moments to be part of these things and Grammys and all this good stuff. So it's been a blast, man.
Yeah, it's been amazing to sit back and watch. And I remember the WCW days, and Goldberg coming out. That was absolutely huge at the time too.
Yeah.
And like even you guys popping up on dirt bike videos when I was growing up. I remember Symphony popped up on Steel Roots from, I think it was Jerry McGrath. That was really cool seeing that there. So music's just sort of been a cement of my childhood, which is awesome to see, man. But on the top of that side of things, you're now part of a band called The Lucid. You hooked up with Violent J from the Insane Clown Posse. Can you tell me how this come about, David? That's very cool. That's very
it's pretty off the wall. Well, so that band, so Drew Fortier, I'd done a little appearance in his movie Dwellers, and then I ended up helping, produce the film with him, with the Ellefson film production thing I put together. And he hit me during COVID. Everybody's at home. I had just done the Ellefson No Cover record, because all of our tours were canceled. We're all at home indefinitely, not knowing really what the hell this whole thing was with the pandemic. And so I just called my friends and said, hey, let's keep working the record. So, that's where it was. So Drew hit me and he said, hey, you want to be on the phone for me?
I went to LA, and sat in my Keller studio. Vin came out from Detroit, and Drew drove out from Indianapolis, and we all sat there, and then I played bass, and we recorded the record. And this was in 2020, so we knew this was gonna work. We knew it was gonna happen, and so so that's it, man. It was a lot of fun, and then a year later we put the record out.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. So how did you go about choosing the collabs there on that, David? Why did you think Violent J?
That was a Vin thing. Vin from Detroit, and Insane Clown Posse's from Michigan. That was his idea.
Yeah.
When we did the second round of songs that we put out back in December and January, we had recorded that. Man, we started recording that probably kind of early mid 2022, so that was kind of just a work in progress over that year, and Vin brought the idea up, and it's funny, the song Saddle Up and Ride, I had this bass at home, and I just plugged it into a Marshall, and I was riffing a thing, and sent it over to the guys, hey, what do you think about this for a new song? And Vin's like, I am on it. And he literally wrote that little country and western intro piece, and then he wrote the song. And that's when he said, he goes, I'd like to ask Violent J to be part of it. It's his buddy. And Vin's cool like that, man. He thinks way outside the box, and to come up with a cool collaboration like that, I thought was was really cool. We put that song out like the day before Christmas because, you know, we're an independent band. And so it was like, you know what, we don't have to follow any rules. Fuck it, let's put it out. You know what I mean? Let's give everybody a good Christmas present.
Yeah, oh, most definitely. Yeah, if people checking this out haven't heard the Lucid yet, they are a whole bunch of fun. David, you've also got another side group. I believe it's pronounced Death, right?
Dieth, yeah, Dieth.
Oh, Dieth. All right, yeah, cool. I've been pronouncing it wrong the whole time.
Dieth, yes, exactly. Put the I in death. Yeah.
Yeah, Dieth, the Lucid. You've got this show coming up, Kings of Thrash. Is there anything else that you're involved in that people need to check out?
You know, another record that I did that came out last year was me and Jeff Scott Soto. So it's called Ellefson Soto. I think a really cool record, kind of more of a power metal type of album, nice. And some songs that I had written with Andy Martingelli, who is in the Ellefson band. He's out of Rome, Italy. Great talent, cool guy. And so yeah, we had Jeff, you know, collaborate with us on this. So yeah, I think between the Lucid, Ellefson Soto, Kings of Thrash, Dieth, the menu's pretty full, you know. So
I would say so. I'd say you keep very, very busy, and of course you are heading our way very soon. Playing in Canberra at the Basement on the 12th of July, Brisbane at the Zoo, not the zoo with the animals, the zoo venue, just to not get confused there, on the 13th of July. Max Watts in Melbourne on the 14th. The Crowbar to wrap things up in Sydney on the 15th. You can grab your tickets through hardlinemedia.net. David, really appreciate you taking time out, man. Got to say, this has been a bunch of fun and cannot wait to catch you guys live.
Awesome, Ned. I look forward to meeting up when we get down there in a couple of weeks, man. Thanks so much for your support.